all the scenes in the desert with Juan and Chewie, and later when you see the migrants as well, what did you really use as a template for that? Did you look at particular photos, or was it more? It
Yes,
wasn't of mine.
I always do a lot of research, and unfortunately, I did have to look at a lot of migrants crossing that expanse of desert, which is extremely dangerous to do. And I saw quite harrowing pictures. But what I mostly noticed was that even crossing the desert, they were reasonably colorfully dressed with loads of layers and layers and layers. And of course, it is very, very cold at night and very, very hot in the day. So when I was doing my cast, I wanted to make sure they had lots of layers that they could take off and wrap around them during the day. And then at night, they'd put all their clothes back on to try and keep warm. And with the migrants passing through that, that sort of Death Valley part, I did them as best I could, of course, making everyone look really dusty and windswept and sunburnt and basically bombarded by the elements, because it's a 3 or 4 day walk. So it was a tough one to do research on, because it's sad.
Did you dress up those bodies as well, the ones they kind of find? Yeah, that was all you. What's that like when it's kind of a prop almost?
So dead bodies, they were all fake, and the art department had procured the fake.
So.
And then it's my department to dress them. So we went to markets. I've sent out, this was before the COVID situation, so I had quite a few buyers who were Mexican and lived in Mexico City, and they went out and went to all like the secondhand markets to really, really poorer areas, because I already wanted the clothes to look as old as possible, because they had supposed to be lying in the desert for 20 years. And then once we got them all, then we aged them again, and we made them dirty and holy and sandy and dusty and desaturated and sun bleached and did all that. And then some of my crew went and spent the day dressing them.
Did you personally pick out Dina's Backstreet Boys shirt? I'm just curious.
Absolutely. I personally picked out everything.
So that wasn't in the script. It was
it was scripted that they had a Backstreet Boys shirt on it, and then I went through all of the shirts that I could find that had their logo on it, and that was the one I liked the most and thought it represented Dina really quite well. And then we had to send it through the legal department and get it cleared, and made sure Backstreet Boys were happy for that to be represented in our show.
Oh, they had to okay it and everything?
Oh yeah. Of course.
What was it like? Just the whole series, it kind of starts off with these more slumpy kind of clothes, these more I don't know, like kind of an underclass kind of look. They have him fixing stuff, and he's always kind of wearing work clothes. Although his wife from the beginning, even when she's writing, has this kind of like more sophisticated contrasting look. I'm curious where you got the inspiration for this look for Allie, especially at the beginning, the junkyards and all that.
Yeah, well, I mean, the story starts, and of course, when it starts, we don't know that they're going to have to go on this crazy trip. And so the basic story of Allie and his family, the Fox family, is that Allie is a huge greenie and thinks that America is just greedy and wasteful and unthoughtful, and throws everything out. And he, of course, just wants to recycle everything and take natural energy from the sun and use the wind. And so he's got all those things set up in his garden to energize the house, and he's making his own petrol out of the oil from the local chicken fry place. And they're quite poor, and we realize that they're quite poor when we see that what he earns when he's at the tomato farm. He literally walks home with $38 in his pocket. So I wanted to introduce all of those ideas into the wardrobe. So I thought everything would be secondhand, probably dressing from Goodwill or Salvation Army. He's very practical, so he would just have just a very minimal wardrobe. And of course, what he did have, he has to look after, hence the very old overalls that he always wears. But with Margot, I wanted her to feel like she she chose secondhand clothing, but it was vintage and it had sort of tailoring left over from, say, the 60s or 70s, which that little corduroy jacket that she wears to work when she goes to work in the library is like a little 60s jacket. And then she's got like 70s jeans on. And so everything is actually vintage and old, but something that you could very easily pick up from Goodwill or Salvos and make it look a bit cooler, because she's an East Coast girl, you know, she's got a bit of style. So I wanted to keep that in her world. Whereas the kids, it didn't matter. They were just, Dina was really trying to be groovy and fit into a world that she felt that she would never fit into. And that was her teenage angst issue. And Charlie was just like the cute little boy who put on whatever was given to him. So he always just looked like a mishmash of, you know, what he found on his bedroom floor. So that's how I started the show. And then, of course, when they go into Mexico and it becomes much more colorful and they get given clothes at the hacienda, and even then when they go down to Mexico City, I had to introduce more lively things. But Logan Polish was very into wearing her Backstreet Boys t-shirt for as long as she could. She just thought that was fantastic, and she thought that was really great for her character. So she wore it for quite a long time.
Parts that are more like Ozark to me were around, you know, the middle, when the lead villain, I guess you could call her, comes in and she has this kind of classy look. And I really like the whole look of the dinner, really. I mean, you know, Melissa especially looked gorgeous in that red dress, and Margot Fox, or
yeah. She's a beautiful woman. She's a really beautiful woman without but she still looks real, which is lovely. And I wanted all of their clothes, because they were given those clothes obviously by the household, and I wanted all of those clothes to look like they had come from somewhere. And I wanted that red dress to be like it had been something that maybe the matriarch had worn, the auntie had worn, you know, in the 90s or something, and it had just been lying around, and so she just gave it to her. So that's why I chose that dress, so that it could look like it had a history and had sort of a Hispanic touch to it in its style.
I thought there was something stitched into Allie's shirt as well before you put the jacket on. I saw like some kind of little design on the...
Oh yeah, that's a Guevara shirt. That's a very classic Mexican shirt. And a lot of, actually the older generations wear them, and it's also was very popular in the 50s. So again, I wanted to have something that had you know, a historical reference to it and a connection to Mexican world. And so I really tried to separate the worlds of when they were in Stockton and then when they went down to Mexico, and do it with using classic old pieces.
The outfit that most stood out to me in the Mosquito Coast was actually Hugo's, with the yellow jacket, because he had kind of Leonardo DiCaprio and, you know, John Connor from Terminator kind of look. And I think it kind of added to this like cool kind of rebellious style. Yes. I was curious about.
He was supposed to be like the rich kid brat, which he did so well. And I just wanted him to be like more trendy and funky than anything else in the show. So I'm glad he stood out for you.
Secondary villain henchman, he seems to kind of be modeled after almost like an Undertaker with the hat and all that. Was that the vibe you were going for? Because that was my impression.
That's an interesting take on it. We actually Neil Cross, who's the showrunner and the writer, is an English guy and same age as me. Like we grew up in England at the same time, so we, you know, followed the same musicians like Madness, and we were all goths basically. And I think he was sort of inspired by like a late 50s look, almost 60s look. And then it just sort of mutated into a combination. And Undertaker certainly was never, I mean, I think that's great, but it was, we never thought about it like that. We thought about him more as a, almost like a rockabilly that had just become sophisticated.
Was the hat supposed to kind of be like a Clockwork Orange kind of thing?
I had never associated it with Clockwork Orange either, but I guess it has the undertones of that sort of chaotic, brutal mind.
Ali kind of has, he's kind of dressed in this kind of festive wear in the later episodes, particularly episode 7. And of course, there's that classic music that plays in the background that everybody always associates with like vacations and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I'm curious what your inspiration was for that.
The original Mosquito Coast with Harrison Ford in it, he wears a yellow Hawaiian shirt nearly the whole way through. So when Ali when he arrives at the hacienda, the house where the sort of halfway house where they think they're going to be okay, but who knows what happens. He gets given a yellow Hawaiian shirt, and that is my homage to Harrison Ford and to the original costume designer and the original look of the show. And I just wanted to make sure that there was something that carried through from marrying the two worlds, basically. And that shirt was the piece. That's the homage to the original film that came out in 1986. Justin Theroux he's very involved with what he wears. He's got a fantastic figure, and he knows, I mean, he's a very fine actor, and he knows what looks good on him and what looks good on him in camera. So he had a lot to do with the way his character was developed. As did Melissa. Melissa George is very specific about what she will wear. So they were very tight collaborations, whereas the kids weren't so much. And you know, the bad guy, gosh, a little blank on his name, Ian Hart, beg your pardon, sorry Ian. You know, the bad guy, yeah, he was very much involved, but he really liked his suits. And the first suit I gave him was like this deep blood red, like really, really deep burgundy. And a black one. And that's all he wore the whole way through until he goes out to the beach. I think he still had the black suit on, but I gave him a lighter shirt. Otherwise, he was very dark all the way through. And I gave him a beach hat when he went out to the beach as well. Like his hat changed to straw. Did you notice that?
Yeah. I wanted to ask, actually, is it harder to be specific, you know, during the pandemic, with little alterations, or everybody's been tested and it's okay at that point to be closed constantly if you need to make adjustments?
Well, I mean, that's a really good question. We started the show, and we started it the year before last. In October, I started my pre-production, and then we started shooting November, and by December we had to go down to Mexico to start shooting there and use all the desert scenes to do all the desert stuff. And then we went down to Mexico City, and then we got shut down on March the 16th. So everything was completely fine. And I had set up a lot of the show by that point, and we were going to do 8 episodes, or maybe even 9. But because we got shut down and everyone was sent home, and then it took 7 months for us to get back up again, going back was very difficult. Everything changed. I wasn't really allowed to touch the actors. I certainly wasn't allowed in close proximity with them. I wasn't allowed to go shopping anymore. Yeah. So we had to divide the department. So we had the people out doing the shopping and working in the world, would drop everything at the front door, and then we'd have it sterilized to bring it into the studio and sterilized before it got fit. And so it was a whole complicated scenario that we had to work around. Yeah.
Lead villain, she has this really sophisticated the aunt I'm talking about look, and it definitely looked like that was modeled really in something, because it always looks like she came almost like a funeral home out, but it's classy. That's how it looked to me.
So the idea behind her is that she, she's running this huge cartel. She's very, very rich. And that beautiful house that they're all in, the hacienda, I keep calling it, is the family home. So it's incredibly grand. And she's got this very Hispanic styling, like beautiful styling to her. And she's old, she's an older lady, but incredibly elegant. And that's what I tried to marry her in with this from times when I was in Spain as a young person, and seeing how beautifully presented the older women were. They dress really nicely, and then going to Mexico and seeing how the older women in the richer areas dress down there. And it's from all my life experiences, and actually the Mexican designers and some Spanish designers went into her wardrobe. But it's all just, sophisticated clothing put together in a subtle manner. And then she sort of did the rest. The way she held herself as well. She moves like a dancer. She's a fantastic actress.
Well, that scissor stuff was quite messed up.
Yeah. Well, her character's a bit cruel. But yeah, she was really lots of fun to work with. I liked it. And there's more to come from her as well, of course.